When people think of migrating fish, a lot of the times they think of fish like salmon in Alaska. But did you know there's something very similar to that here in Pennsylvania? It's in the waters around here in Lake Erie that we have a very unique fish species that actually has a spawning cycle where it goes out into the lake and then upstream in huge quantities. And they're a pretty big fish related to salmon. Let's see if we can find it. Oh my gosh, guys, check this out. So this is obviously not a fish, it's in a tree. But this beautiful arboreal herbivore is a walking stick, a northern walking stick. Dude, I haven't seen these around here pretty much ever. I've seen like maybe one or two in my life, but this one's beautiful. It's near the end of its life stage because they typically only live a year, maybe two. Typically at the end of the summer or fall when they're done breeding, they just end up passing away. It's just how long they live is not very long for most insects, unfortunately. But you can tell this one's fully grown, like absolutely beautiful, green and brown, and he's perfectly camouflaged on the trees. Like, look at this. Like, look at that crazy amount of camouflage. And they're very slow moving, very intentionally moving animals. So they'll only move in a way that keeps them camouflaged because they are herbivores. So meaning that they basically exclusively eat plants and plant leaves. In fact, they skeletonize these leaves like oak leaves. They love oak leaves, one of their favorite food sources. And they're pretty generalist, but they do really love oak leaves. And look right here, we have an oak leaf. I mean, it's fallen, and obviously he's not gonna eat it. I'll be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure if it's a female or not, but I think it might be a female just because of the color variance, and it's a little bit larger. The females tend to be larger and have a bit more of that green tone to them as well. What a beautiful, beautiful little phasmid. I think that's so cool. I just rarely ever see these guys, especially in the north. Sometimes when you go down to Florida, then you see them, but these guys are just so cool. And it literally, this video is gonna be awesome because we're starting off on top, baby. Let's go. Let's go look for the fish now. Guys, they're right here. Guys, these are the fish that we're talking about. It's a salmonid. It's not a salmon, but it is a salmonid, kind of confusing. The steelhead trout. Well, that was really cool, but it's harder to access these and get close to actually see them to show you guys really what it looks like. So we're gonna go to a better location that I know has a lot more fish, and we get right there next to them, inches away. So we're here at the next location. This is the location I wanted to show you guys. So this is Avonia Beach here in Fairview, Pennsylvania. And I mean, like, there's a ton of fish. These are steelhead, guys. So they're big trout. Big old trout. I mean, I've seen them, like, tell me when to stop. Right about here. Like, they're big, huge fish. And so the cool thing is, these guys are on their spawning route. So it's November right now here in Pennsylvania, which means it's end of the fall. We're eventually gonna get into winter here soon. This is the peak, or at least the beginning of them going upstream and spawning or breeding. And you might be asking yourself, well, do they die afterwards? Well, unlike salmon, trout are interoperous breeders, meaning basically that they can breed multiple years in a row, many years in a row. In fact, they're seasonal. So they're seasonal interoperous breeders, as opposed to semilipary or semiloparous breeders like salmon. Salmon are semiloparous, meaning basically that they breed one time in their life and then they die. So they're basically, their purpose in life is to breed. And you might see with trout like this, like rainbow trout, which steelhead is a type of rainbow trout that has this life cycle that goes into the ocean, or in this case, Lake Erie behind us. They may breed 3 to 5 times in their lifetime. And they can live up to 11 years, so that's pretty crazy. Typically in Pennsylvania, around 8 years is the norm, 6 to 8 years or so. The other cool thing is, and we're gonna walk over here, is that these trout and salmon, so salmonids in general, which are trout and salmon. So I've said earlier, it's a salmonid. Salmonids are both salmon and trout. Kind of confusing. Think of 2 tiny groups in a big group, or 2 small bags in a larger bag. One is trout, and the other one is salmon. Really closely related species, salmonids. These guys right here all salmon is, for the most part, as far as I know, are sexually dimorphic, meaning that the males look differently than the females. The females typically will have a very smoothened face. They're kind of a bit more pretty than the males. The males will get these really sharp faces, and as they get older and older, that they get big, big, big. So the males sometimes can be larger than the females. Also, the males do have that very prominent, sharp rostrum or mouth that you would expect to see on something like a chin hook salmon. But you see it here on these guys here. Check this out. Like I said earlier, they're a type of rainbow trout, and you can kind of see in the sides of these guys why they're a type of rainbow trout. I don't mean like a breed of rainbow trout. They're just a type of trout, rainbow trout specifically, that their life cycle goes into a larger body of water. Interestingly enough, steelhead and rainbow trout are not a native species here in Pennsylvania. In fact, rainbow trout are typically found on the west coast of the United States, as opposed to the east coast and other parts of the world. Steelhead specifically, they're very prolific. They can breed multiple times, so they're a really good fish to farm. So you see them on pretty much every continent except for the Arctic. So basically, because they're so meaty and a good fish to eat for the most part, they're found on every continent. And because of that, they're actually, like I said, a non-native species. So here in Pennsylvania, they're considered to be a non-native species, not an invasive. There's a little bit of a difference there. Non-native just means it's not originally from an area. Invasive means that it's both not from an area and causing detriment to a habitat. It's not really doing that here in Pennsylvania. In fact, these guys are stimulating the economy here in Fairview, Pennsylvania. You know, everybody buying fishing license, buying fishing gear, it kind of brings up the market. So I guess that's pretty good. But in other places in the world where they're not native, they outcompete the natural fish. So they actually are very, very strong predators. So they're voracious predators. They'll actually eat a lot. And so the issue that a lot of these places are having is that it's hard to get rid of them. We don't have that issue, thankfully, here in Pennsylvania. So we can actually enjoy the steelhead trout for what they're here for the fisheries. And honestly, it's just super cool to see something like this, like an actual run that you would expect to see something like a migrant. Like I said, you would expect to see something like this in Alaska, not in Pennsylvania, not in northwestern Pennsylvania, that's for sure. It's places like these that are just so cool to see, and it's hard to think that, like, I grew up in this area, so it's hard to think that something like this existed. And to be totally honest with you, I didn't know that this was here until like a couple of years ago, which is kind of crazy to think. I had heard all my friends talking about it. Sorry if I'm yelling. The wind is so incredibly strong right now, and I am frozen solid. My nipples are poking out of my shirt and tearing holes. But like, it's crazy. These fish are huge. They can reach incredible lengths and weigh a lot. And I mean, like, Lake Erie right behind us right now is like so incredibly tumultuous. It's kind of terrifying. But hundreds and hundreds of fish, guys, hundreds. And they'll probably breed and spawn and then go right back out into the lake behind us, which is such a cool life cycle, such a cool thing to see that's generated here in an ecosystem where I grew up, where I kind of pretty much lived most of my life. So, I don't know about you guys, this has been a really cool adventure. If you like this, make sure you hit that like button, and as always, subscribe for more adventures to come, and keep it real, keep it wild, and I'll see you in my next adventures here on Real Wild Adventure.